O'clock in the morning, police respond to a call. They find a man allegedly assaulting a woman. The man is shot. The SIU is investigating. CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan has the complete story.
The show must go on. Pride Toronto says more money is needed, but they plan to do the best they can this year.
And the big squeeze along Bathurst as the city looks to make more bus lanes. Businesses fret about the impact. We have reaction this hour.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Phil Perkins. Thanks for joining us. The province's police watchdog is investigating a police-involved shooting in Markham. York Regional Police say the man was allegedly attacking a woman inside a condo when officers arrived.
Let's go live to CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan, who's at the scene. This is near Highway 7 and Warden. Steve.
Yeah, guys, Buchanan Drive is a location. It's up in Unionville. It's a condo complex, and I'm told that this altercation or this interaction happened in a third-floor unit. So based on what we have been told by the SIU and by the York Regional Police, this officer may have very well saved the life of a woman who police allege and the SIU allege was being actively stabbed by a man in the unit when police breached the door. So according to both the SIU and York Regional Police, they received a call at 4:45 this morning from neighbors calling 911, complaining or advising of a disturbance going on in one of the units. Uniformed officers responded. They were able to breach the door, and once inside, again, they saw, according to the police and the SIU, a man actively stabbing a woman. An officer faced with imminent threat of serious bodily harm or death to that woman and perhaps to the officers themselves, discharged a single shot from the service pistol, striking the man, eliminating that threat. That man is now in life-threatening condition in hospital, and the woman is in stable condition in hospital for her stab wounds. Now, we did hear from the SIU earlier on today, and here's what they said with regards to this occurrence. What's this?
The nature of the interaction is under investigation. All I can tell you at this point in time is that police heard sounds coming from outside of the unit. They entered the unit. A short time later, one officer discharged his firearm and the man was struck. That's all I can confirm at this time.
Now, although the SIU have not made designations right now, what I can tell you is that the fact that one officer fired one round, that officer will be designated as the subject officer, and the SIU will investigate and critique their actions to make sure that they acted well within the law to use lethal force. The other officers will be designated as witness officers, and the relationship between that man and woman have not been made aware of that as of right now. So back to you guys.
Okay, CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan. Steve, thank you. Well, police are investigating a shooting in Vaughan. This sent one person to hospital.
A 33-year-old man was found suffering from gunshot wounds at Bathurst Street, just north of Rutherford Road, just before 10:30 this morning. Police say his injuries are not considered life-threatening. Investigators say the suspect drove away from the scene in an older model black sedan. Police are describing the shooting as an isolated incident and say there is no immediate risk to public safety.
We're very aware that anytime we're responding to a shooting, again, particularly in a high trafficked area where people are living from the day-to-day lives, there is that concern. And while firearms can be indiscriminatory in terms of where these bullets are going, a shooting there, even a targeted one, can be considered very dangerous at the time. Again, fortunately, in this case, only one person was struck and they were transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. But we do want to make sure the public knows that we are aware to the feelings of insecurity that can come along with the shooting happening right outside your front door.
And police are asking anyone who has dash cam or security camera footage from the area to contact investigators. All right, well, a woman accused of killing 3 people in 3 Ontario cities last year has been found fit to stand trial.
That's Sabrina Kaldar. She's charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. This is in connection with 3 killings over 3 days in Toronto, Niagara Falls, and Hamilton last October. So this past March, a judge ruled that she was unfit to stand trial and was ordered into a 60-day psychiatric treatment program before reassessment. Well, today a judge said that if most of her symptoms of mental illness have been resolved, it's likely that her unfitness has also resolved. Kaldar is scheduled to appear in court next month.
Well, Crown prosecutors began making their closing arguments today in the sexual assault trial of 5 former Canadian World Junior hockey players.
And CTV's Heather Wright joins us live from London, continuing our coverage. Okay, Heather, it's 5 o'clock. Wrap us up with today, please.
Well, yes, court is over for the day. We will be back here tomorrow. And we heard from the final two defense attorneys and then, of course, from the Crown attorney as well. And so after 2.5 days of closing submissions from the defense, we really got the sense that they were on the same line of closing their case with the judge, going to the credibility and reliability of the complainant in this case known as EM. Today, we heard from the Crown for the first time in these closing submissions, and she, again, struck to the heart of the case, which is consent. She began her closing submissions to the judge saying that the complainant, EM in this case, did not consent to the group activity that happened in that hotel room 7 years ago. And she alluded to and brought up some of the text exchanges that happened leading up to that incident and in the days that followed. And she told the judge that those text exchanges, those group chats, are going to provide compelling evidence that EM was not the instigator of the group sexual activity that happened in that hotel room. And she says that it actually cuts to the credibility of the 5 accused. And so we expect to hear more of that as she continues her closing arguments tomorrow. We're expecting things might wrap up tomorrow evening, but that's still unclear at this point.
Heather, you're in the courthouse. What are you hearing from either family and friends of EM who might be there or people, family and friends, supporters of the defendants?
Well, it's a packed courtroom. You know, all 5 accused are sitting in desks right behind each other. EM, the complainant, is not in the courtroom, and she hasn't been testifying from that courtroom when she did testify earlier in this trial. She gave her testimony and her evidence from another room in the building on secure closed-circuit television. So she's not in there. There are several family members of the accused in there and a lot of media. There's, in fact, an overflow room as well. And throughout this week, there have been sporadic supporters of the complainant outside, sort of heckling the accused as they walked in. That's what happened on the first day. Also, a lone man on the other side voicing his support for the accused. So certainly this is a case that has garnered widespread attention here locally in London, obviously right across the country and around the world as well, as there are international media here sort of hanging on every word that's being presented to the judge in these closing submissions, and certainly waiting for that verdict that is going to be delivered by the judge at the end of July.
Yeah, and along with that, Heather, can you just give us a brief overview of the timeline, you know, from where we are today up until when that decision is expected?
Well, we expect that closing submissions will end at some point this week. We were initially told they were going to wrap up by the end of day today. That's not going to happen. They're going to go at least into tomorrow, because after the Crown gives her closing submissions, the defense attorneys will have an opportunity to reply to those. So at some point this week, closing submissions will wrap up, and then the judge has given herself roughly 6 weeks to go over all of the evidence in this case. And keep in mind, this was about a 6-week trial, about 25 days in court. There's a lot of testimony, a lot of, you know, court precedent cases that have been brought up throughout this trial. And so the judge will then go through all of the evidence, all of the testimony, all of the case law associated with this trial, and deliver her verdicts. Because keep in mind, while these 5 accused are being tried together, they all face separate charges. They all face separate, or all have separate lawyers. And so those verdicts will be delivered together, but at the end of July.
All right, CTV's Heather Rudd joining us live from the London area courthouse. Thanks so much. Do appreciate the coverage.
Thanks, Heather.
It is 5:08 right now. Feels like 30. Let's take a look at rush hour traffic, Adjoa.
Yeah, we're in the heart of it, Phil. So the drive, not the easiest for commuters that are making their way out on the major route. So we'll start with these problems on the 401 westbound. This is right underneath the 427. Heavy tow just arrived on scene, so that's a good sign. The right lane and shoulder, though, blocked because of this stall. And this is what it's doing to the drive. It's pretty backed up from well before Yonge Street. Even the eastbound side slowdowns, but haven't spotted any issues, at least to pass along. Problems persist, and they're happening on the eastbound Rutherford on-ramp that does take you to the northbound 427. The ramp is still closed because of this truck that's on the bullnose. Not too sure why they decided to close the ramp, but they have. And not the easiest go as well on the Toronto-bound lanes of the QEW at the start of the ramp that takes you to Trafalgar. We are dealing with a stalled vehicle. It does have the right lane blocked. Niagara-bound QEW also busy into Mississauga, Oakville. And if you're traveling towards the Burlington stretch on city streets, actually outside of camera view, just a new problem coming into the traffic desk. Northbound 400, just north of the 401, crews on scene of a collision, blocking a live lane. I'll send it back to you.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
It's now 5:10, 28 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Pride Toronto says it has secured new funding from major corporate sponsors, but more money is needed.
Well, Pride Toronto provided an update today on this year's events. This is after some major sponsors pulled their support recently.
Yeah, let's go live to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman, who is on Church Street right now. A lot of people coming in to help out.
Certainly, the water guns will go on as planned. Bakari and Phil, the show will go on. Festival 2025 not impacted, but it's 2026 that could be in peril if more companies, organizations, and people don't step up to help Pride Toronto. They say they're about $900,000 short when it comes to funding for this year's budget. And so after some major sponsors like Home Depot, Google, Nissan, Clorox bowed out of sponsoring the festival this year, they've had to find alternate arrangements, alternate companies to step up and increase their generosity with some cash. Here's a bit of what we heard from the executive director of Pride Toronto.
I say this with absolutely no apologies. You don't walk away from us when our house is on fire, and when we rebuild, you try to come back. So my answer to this will be, for the ones that walked away today, they're going to have to demonstrate that they are ready, they have done their work in order to come back.
And so this $900,000 shortfall for funding for Pride Toronto is twofold. First, because some of these corporate sponsors bowed out after formally or verbally, according to the executive director of Pride, agreeing to support the festival. But secondly, putting the festival on is getting more and more expensive every year. A lot more expensive for insurance. Since 2022, we've been told more money being spent on things like security and paid duty police officers. And so that's why it's kind of a dire situation for people here in the village that I've been talking to today. They know how important the Pride Festival is. It's one of the largest in North America, and they're disappointed that some of these corporate sponsors are pulling out. They say a lot of what's happening in the U.S. the Trump administration now bleeding over to this side of the border. Here's some reaction from the village today.
I'm really disturbed at the fact that the funding would be reduced just before Pride. It doesn't look well. It doesn't bode well.
Sponsorship is just not existent, and it really sucks. I remember my sibling was trans, and they came down 2 years ago for their first Pride in Toronto, and they were struggling with their job and, kind of feeling like they were being pushed out. And I said, look down this street, look at all these companies. You just need to find a job with one of these places. They have support. They're really supporting the community, and there's hope for you. So it's sad to hear that hope is maybe leaving.
Pride's been going on before we had sponsors. Pride is a celebration of unity, getting together as a community, and just celebrating each other. So I don't see it any different. I'm super pumped to see what happens.
That last person you just heard from there, Bakari and Phil, they come from Texas, just moved to Toronto, and so there's already a stark difference between how things are down there when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and acceptance of some people in the LGBTQ2S+ community. And so Pride Month well underway, and the parade's set to come in just about 2.5 weeks, June 29th. The streets here in Toronto will be full of rainbows. Back to you.
All right, CP24's Beatrice Vaisman reporting live. Beatrice, thank you very much. Okay, let's shift gears. Right now, there is a significant police presence at a community center in Vaughan because of a stabbing.
CP24 is hovering over the scene at Valour Village Community Center near West End Rutherford. You can see we do have a police officer standing by the structure itself. Several pylons there. The one lone police cruiser keeping the caution tape up around the area of this investigation. The call came in around 3:30 this afternoon, so just over 2 hours ago, where a young person was found with stab wounds. And now we can take a look as it's continuing to rotate around what looks like a soccer pitch and a parking lot there by the community center. We do understand that the victim will be okay. Police believe the victim was targeted, and a search is currently underway for multiple attackers.
Okay, right now it's 5:16, 28 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, we'll find out why a group of business owners and residents are raising concerns about proposed transit expansion on a stretch of Bathurst. Welcome back. Transit Big topic here in the city. A group of concerned residents and business owners are voicing concerns about transit expansion along a portion of Bathurst.
Okay, for this story, let's go live to CP24, Sija Liu, who's along Bathurst. Sija.
Bakari, Phil, there is a battle over Bathurst Street right now, and it has to do with how the road is being used. So the city has a plan to improve transit called Rapid TO. What they want to do is to take out 2 lanes along Bathurst and change it into priority bus lanes. And that would mean no curbside parking at all along this street. But the city is hoping this will help get the street moving when it comes to commuters and drivers. But what this means for businesses in the area is concern over what it would mean when you take away parking and take away access along Bathurst Street. And that's why a community group has popped up called Protect Bathurst. They've been putting up these posters saying their neighborhood is at risk. And I have Paul Macusi here, who is one of the spokespersons, and he's also a business owner and someone who lives in the neighborhood. And Paul, what is your biggest concern when it comes to the city's plan to, take away some of the lanes on Bathurst and implement this new bus route?
Well, it's permanent changes to infrastructure that's going very fast without much public consultation. That's our biggest issue right now. If they were to speak to residents and business owners a little bit more frequently and figure out how it's going to affect us and the outcome of said changes, maybe we can come to an agreement that makes sense for everybody. But the plan's being rushed and it's flawed. We're poking holes in it constantly, and there's just too much happening too quickly that the city needs to take a step back and listen to us and work with us on fixing this plan for everyone.
And a lot of the businesses along this road are mom and pop shops, small businesses. And one of your main concerns was the fact that no more parking and how that could really put these businesses at risk.
Yeah, many of our stores are boutique stores here between DuPont and Bloor. We attract people from around the city, the province, the country, and outside the country as well. So many of us do rely on parking for customers. Also, there's many medical use buildings on this street. So there are people with mobility issues, there's seniors, there's the church that hosts funerals. All these things are at risk with the proposed changes by Rapid TO.
And one more quick question, I guess. What is a solution or a compromise you would like to see?
Compromises there could be many of them. I mean, it's the city's job that they should be providing these compromises to us. Our councillor has provided some, which is a great step. It's a step in the right direction, but we're hoping for more options and more solutions that can help all of us and appease all of the community.
Understood. Well, thanks so much, Paul. Appreciate your time. Again, this is over the city's Rapid TO plan. The city hopes to accelerate this plan in time for FIFA to improve the transit system along Bathurst Street. But Bakari, Phil, a lot of businesses pushing back in this area say this will cost them their livelihoods.
Yeah, it's a tough one, no doubt. All right, thank you very much, Sija. Okay, going to the States. Despite days of unrest in California, anti-ICE protesters are promising they're not done. Taking to the streets in Los Angeles and beyond. LA's mayor says the curfew isn't going anywhere for now.
Okay, let's go to the newsroom. That's where we join CP24's Andrew Brennan, who has a live report for us. Andrew.
Hello, the both of you. Now let's talk with the latest. Actually, in the last few minutes, we've gotten confirmation those National Guard Corps members who have been deployed, which is something unheard of historically, deployed for active duty in the continental United States. We have confirmation from at least the major general in charge saying that several civilians and U.S. citizens have been detained by members of the National Guard, and they were detained. They do not have the power to arrest, but detained by members of the National Guard to then be ultimately arrested and charged by the LAPD and the local district attorney. Now, this is, again, coming in the last few minutes, Major General Scott Sherman giving that confirmation. We do know in the last roughly 24 hours, there were about 200 people arrested among the hundreds and thousands that took to the streets of downtown Los Angeles, not far from Skid Row and the Arts District. This has really been centered around a roughly square mile or 2.5 kilometers squared, give or take, of Los Angeles, which is a huge city. It's roughly maybe 4 times the size of Toronto, just in terms of space. And with that in mind, there's a lot of people that have been going about their day to day as if nothing's happened, but there are others that are promising for more demonstrations. We'll get to that in a moment, and more actions against the as they describe it, inhumane actions of immigration and customs enforcement officers. We heard not long ago from the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, and she says the White House needs to take a look in the mirror and accept, as she puts it, culpability.
When you start deploying federalized troops on the heels of these raids, it is a drastic and chaotic escalation and completely unnecessary. These aren't the criminals the administration is allegedly targeting. These are mothers and fathers, restaurant workers, seamstress, home care workers, everyday Angelenos trying to make a living.
But according to the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, referring to many of those who have been detained and ultimately removed from the United States as illegal aliens, and says that ICE will continue the work that the president wants. Back to you.
All right, Andrew Brennan, live in the newsroom. Thank you. It is 5:24. It feels like 30 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
Well, Beach Boys co-founder Brian Wilson is being remembered today after his death at 82. We'll take a look at his life and legacy next. Beach Boys co-founder, singer, and songwriter Brian Wilson has died. For a closer look at his life and legacy.
Yeah, let's go to CP24's Lindsay Biscaya in the newsroom. And, you know, I was in the newsroom before getting to Live at 5, and they're playing Beach Boys. And it just kind of gets everybody in that summer mood.
Yeah, I was actually just listening to a couple songs myself. I mean, you hear people playing it all the time, especially today. A lot of people playing some Beach Boys songs, really remembering Brian Wilson. Condolences pouring in from all over for this loss that we're hearing about today from his family, from his children. Brian Wilson, of course, known for transforming the genre of pop, as well as songwriting, the way albums are produced. And a lot of artists throughout the decades have really looked up to Brian Wilson and have inspired to be just like him. You can see on his website a lot of people like Freddie Mercury, for example, John Lennon, a number, countless artists throughout the decades really talking about how Brian Wilson inspired them and the way they write music themselves. So really, we're learning a little bit more about this today. We don't have a lot of details. As I mentioned, his children released a statement today saying that he died at the age of 82. He's passed away, and they're now asking for privacy, but again, acknowledging that the world is really grieving because obviously the legacy that Brian Wilson leaves behind is enormous. And we've been speaking with a lot of people within the industry talking about that legacy, including music commentator Eric Alper, who was talking today about that songwriting and the passion that Brian Wilson really had for staying in the studio almost all the time. Here's more what he had to say.
Wouldn't It Be Nice is one of those songs that it's a perfect love song for prom night, but when you listen to it a little bit more, there's a lot of aching underneath. There's so many songs that coincidentally that, you know, when it's gorgeous outside, that reminds you of summer. But you listen a little bit deeper and there's a little bit of a frustration there. There's a little bit of lack of love. There's a little bit of heartache in most of his music, which is astonishing considering that, you know, the Beach Boys started off with songs about surfing in cars and high school dances.
Have been under a court-ordered conservatorship since the beginning of last year when his wife passed away. But at this point, as you can see from the statement, Phil and Bakari, we're not learning a lot more about the cause of death or when or where it happened, but his children saying that they're asking for privacy at this time. Back to you.
Okay, joining us live from the newsroom, CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. Lindsay, thank you very much. It's 5:29, 28 degrees. This is Live at 5.
When we come back, it's Pride Month, and Pride Toronto provide an update today on this year's events after some major sponsors pulled their support. We'll let you know if someone came to help out. 4 o'clock in the morning, police respond to a call and find a man allegedly assaulting a woman. The man eventually shot. The SIU investigating. Our CP24 crime analyst Steve Ryan has a story.
Well, the show must go on. Pride Toronto says more money's needed, but they plan to do the best they can this year.
And the big squeeze along a long stretch of Bathurst as the city looks to make more bus lanes and dedicated streetcar lanes. We have reaction.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening. I'm Phil Perkins.
And I'm Bakari Savage. So Pride Toronto provided an update today on this year's events after some major sponsors pulled their support recently.
Yeah, let's go live to CP24's Beatrice Vaisman, who is on Church Street right now. And it is Pride Month, Beatrice, so people must already be in the spirit of it all.
They very much are, Phil, especially on a day like today. The patio is already starting to get packed with the after-work crowd, people out here enjoying, certainly in high spirits. And it comes after a pretty tough few weeks for the Pride Toronto organization itself. The executive director is saying, fear not, the 2025 festival is going to be great. The parade happening in a couple of weeks. It's going to go off awesome. We've got everything in a row. But it's the 2026 festival. That's the one that they're concerned about. The reason being several corporate sponsors pulled out funding, including Home Depot, Google, Nissan, Clorox, companies that already had formal or verbal agreements, according to Pride Toronto, to pay up. And so now we're seeing support ramping up from other companies and a union, SCIU, which represents tens of thousands of healthcare workers across this province, stepping up to help support the organization. Here's more from their spokesperson.
In March of this year, SCIU stepped up to become an official sponsor of Pride Toronto. We stepped up not only because others have stepped back, but to send a very clear message. The fight for workers' rights is inseparable from the fight for 2S LGBTQIA rights.
Several other sponsors also stepped in to help, including Shoppers Drug Mart and No Frills. That's some pretty strong words today from the executive director of Pride Toronto. He didn't shy away from pointing to what's going on stateside under the Trump administration and contentious issues there with members of the LGBTQ2+S community. He says that's bleeding over to this side of the border. And in fact, Kojo Modest saying they believe there's a direct correlation between the policies, but he said you don't walk away from us when your house is on fire. And if any of these companies who pulled out this year want to come back next year, Modest says they've got to show that they've done the work before they can come back. As for reaction from the village, people, of course, knowing that the Pride Festival, pivotal for this community. Listen.
When I started with Pride was in 1987, and it was a little group of people walking down the streets, and we all had to hide. And now the last 10, 15 years, it's huge celebration for like 1 million people, if not more. So if we start to lose that, that's going to have a lot of issues.
It's everything. It's the parade. It's the people. It's the coming together. It's such a beautiful experience. It's all positive. There's never any negative. And like, you know, it's so hot here in Toronto, and when the water guns are shooting and, you know, people are dancing and singing on the streets, who could ask for any more? Like, I mean, it's just such a wonderful experience.
It'll still be what it is. It's still uplifting. I know so many people come from other cities and they come on in, and like this is the closest experience they're going to have for inclusion for miles. So I think whatever small amount there is going to still be hopeful, and we're excited to be part of that.
Pride Toronto is saying that there's about $900,000 backlog, really, or gap when it comes to funding for the festival. Again, this year is okay. It's 2026 they're worried about. The reason there's this lack of funding, Bakari and Phil, or the shortfall, is because of the major sponsors, but also it's getting more and more expensive to run the festival. But as one person told me, Pride's been around since before there were corporate sponsors, and it'll be around long after as well. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Beatrice Vaisman. All right, moving on now to transit. A group of concerned residents and business owners voicing their concerns about transit expansion along a very long stretch of Bathurst.
Let's go live to CP24. Sija Liu along Bathurst. Sija.
Bakari, Phil, this is a battle over bus lanes on a stretch of Bathurst between Lakeshore to Eglinton. The city wants to install dedicated bus and streetcar lanes, but for businesses, especially in the annex area, they say this will kill their neighborhood and their businesses by taking away street side parking as well as foot traffic. But for more commentary on this, I'm joined by Andrew Pulsifer, who is the executive director of TTC Riders, a transit advocacy group. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, all of this commentary has to do with bus lanes along Bathurst Street, and the city wants to do this by improving transit. I guess, what is your take on the situation coming from a transit advocacy group point of view?
Well, 35,000 people rely on transit on Bathurst every day, and I do think that they deserve not to be stuck in traffic and deserve to spend more time with their friends, family, and loved ones. Most people point to transit being overcrowded or unreliable as being their main barrier from becoming a transit user. So having these dedicated lanes would also allow more people to take transit and fewer people taking their car, and will ease congestion.
And do you think the way that the city is going about this by taking away a lane and dedicating that to streetcars and buses is the right move to go, despite backlash from some of these businesses?
Well, I mean, businesses are not a monolith. We've been speaking to businesses all along Bathurst Street, and there's actually quite a few who are in support of them as well. We saw a similar backlash to the King Street priority streetcar lane from businesses back several years ago. But since then, we haven't seen a decline in business sales in that area. So they're not a monolith. There are people who are absolutely in support. We've been putting up our own signs. I support dedicated lanes in some businesses, and if you walk that stretch, you'll probably see a few of them.
Mm-hmm. And would you say there could be a compromise or anything in the middle that could satisfy both sides, both commuters as well as businesses who are worried?
There could be. I'm waiting for city staff to release the recommendations from the public consultations that they conducted throughout May. They'll be presenting those recommendations at executive. And those recommendations are based on real conversations with people and businesses in the community. If there are reasonable concessions that still give transit users priority, then we're open to supporting that. But we need to see what those recommendations are based on data and feedback before we start thinking about it. As it stands right now, we're in favor of the lanes as they've been proposed by the TTC and the TTC staff.
Understood. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And Bakari, Phil, we'll send it back to you for now.
CP24, Seja Liu. Seja, thanks a lot. Right now, it is 5:39. Let's get a check on the evening commute with CP24 traffic specialist, Adjoa Nsiaya-Boa.
Yeah, Bakari, it has been a tough drive for commuters. And you know what, even a tough thing for my cameras, which are keep going in and out. But they're working right now, so I can show you problems which are adding to your very, very slow drive. This is the 401 westbound, right underneath the 427 or right at the exit ramp that takes you to Carlingview. It's a stalled truck. They've MTO's on scene, heavy tow is on scene, and they decided to block an additional lane. So that means 2 right lanes are now out because of the situation. Let's see if this camera works. It does. There was a bit of a backlog from the DVP. It looks like things are starting to improve as drivers don't want to get caught in that backlog. Southbound 404 DVP, it's still pretty busy from Finch to South of Lawrence. Northbound also delays from Don Mills up towards Shepherd on the 404. Everything opens up nicely for you. Not so open on the northbound lanes of the 410. Still a crawl as you make your way towards Brampton, but at least no live lane issues. On city streets, crews on scene of a brand new collision blocking lanes on Bayview, right at Eglinton. I'll send it back to you both.
All right, thank you very much, Adra. It is 5:41. Feels like 30. You're watching live at 5.
Well, the province's police watchdogs investigating a police-involved shooting in Markham. We're going to have a live update from the scene. That's next. The province's police watchdog is investigating a police-involved shooting in Markham.
Yeah, York Regional Police say the man was allegedly attacking a woman inside a condo. That's when officers arrived. Let's go live to CP24 crime analyst Steve Ryan at the scene at Highway 7 and Warden. What can you tell us about this incident, Stephen? How are you seeing this as a former cop?
Well, police are authorized, Phil, in law to resort directly to lethal force if they are presented with a threat of imminent bodily harm or death to themselves or to someone else. And based on the information that we've been given by both York Regional Police and the SIU, it appears as though an officer was faced with that imminent threat of bodily harm to another person, and that officer discharged their service pistol one time, striking the male attacker and eliminating the threat in this condo here at 278 Buchanan Drive. So here's what happened according to York Regional Police and the Special Investigations Unit. 4:45 this morning, people in this condo called 911 regarding a disturbance in one of the units. It appeared to be a domestic type of disturbance. Uniforms arrived on scene. They could hear the disturbance going on inside of the unit. They breached the door. Once inside, according to police and the SIU, the officers saw a man actively attacking and stabbing a woman in the condo unit. That is when one shot was fired by one of the officers, again eliminating that threat. So because there is serious bodily harm occurring as a result of an interaction with police, this man is in life-threatening condition in hospital. The woman, by the way, is also in hospital with multiple stab wounds, and she's in stable condition. Because of the injuries, as a result of the interaction with police, the SIU are now investigating. It is their mandate to determine whether or not the police use proper and justifiable force, proportionate force, in shooting this man and eliminating the threat that they were presented with. Here's more from the SIU, who we heard from earlier on. Let's listen.
The information we have is that at approximately 4:45 a.m., somebody from within the building contacted police to report hearing a dispute coming from another unit. And that's when officers were dispatched to go investigate what was happening.
We're not sure of the relationship yet between the man and the woman. The SIU said they were still working on firming that up. One shot fired by one officer, so that one officer will most likely be designated as the subject officer. It will be their actions that is critiqued by the SIU. The other officers involved will be designated as witness officers. Back to you guys.
All right, CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan. Steve, thank you. And police are investigating a shooting in Vaughan. This sent one person to hospital.
It was a 33-year-old man who found suffering from gunshot wounds on Bathurst Street north of Rutherford just before 10:30 this morning. Police say his injuries are considered not life-threatening, meaning he's going to be okay. Investigators say the suspect drove away in an older model black sedan. Police are describing the shooting as an isolated incident and say there is no immediate risk to public safety.
So it's still very early in the investigation. Obviously, the priority is the person's well-being and making sure they get adequate medical treatment. We do know from the preliminary investigation that we do believe that the target of the shooting was our injured male. And again, that's why we're saying this is a targeted incident and that there isn't a concern about public safety ongoing.
And police are asking anyone who has dash cam or security camera video from the area, please contact investigators.
And police have now identified the 15-year-old boy who was fatally shot in the West End over the weekend.
15-year-old Jakai Jones was found with a gunshot wound. This is near Emmett Avenue and Jane Street shortly after 10 o'clock Saturday night. He later died in hospital. Investigators continue to appeal for information in his murder. No suspect descriptions have been released.
And a woman accused of killing 3 people in 3 Ontario cities last year has been found to be fit to stand trial.
Sabrina Kaldar is charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. This is in connection with 3 killings over 3 days in Toronto, Niagara Falls, and Hamilton last October. So this past March, a judge ruled that she was unfit to stand trial and was ordered into a 60-day psychiatric treatment program before reassessment. Well, today a judge said that if most of her symptoms of mental illness have been resolved, it's likely that her unfitness has also resolved. Kaldar is scheduled to appear in court next month.
It's at 5:47, feels like 30. You're watching Live at 5.
Well, coming up, the statue of Canada's first prime minister is back on full display outside of Queen's Park. Ontario's Financial Accountability Officer is out with a new report on the province's economic performance.
It finds Ontario's GDP increased by 0.6% in the fourth quarter of 2024, thanks to increased household spending, international exports, and residential investment. Recent indicators suggest mostly positive economic results for the first quarter of this year due to gains in employment, trade, manufacturing, and exports. But that's expected to be offset by significant weakness in the housing market, with both housing starts and resales sharply lower.
Well, the statue of Canada's first prime minister is back on full display outside of Queen's Park.
Now, the boards came down today that had been surrounding the statue of John A. Macdonald for the last 5 years. Protesters were upset with the role Macdonald played in the creation of residential schools, which he is considered the architect of. Indigenous groups say that this will stir up emotions and cause pain. Premier Doug Ford had publicly said he wanted the statue restored to the way it was.
I recognize, and our security recognizes, that this is a contentious and very controversial statue, a monument, and we don't want to see further vandalism. So there is a plan in place. We will have 24/7 security on the grounds at Queen's Park monitoring the situation. I welcome protest. And if people are upset, please share your story, share your concerns, but we have to do it peacefully, and we have to do it respectfully, and we have to do it within the law.
Well, the statue had been covered since 2020. This is after statues of Macdonald were vandalized across the country as Canadians came to terms with the history of residential schools.
Also following news on Canada-U.S. relations.
CTV News can confirm that the U.S. and Canada have intensified talks for an economic and security deal in recent weeks. The framework for such an arrangement trading hands between the two parties. So sources who spoke to CTV News on the condition of anonymity all universally caution the finalizing of such a deal requires sign-off directly from U.S. President Donald Trump, and there are no explicit assurances that'll happen on a certain timeline.
It's 5:52, feels like 30. You're watching Live at 5.
Well, coming up, the one-year countdown to the 2026 World Cup has begun. Clocks are being unveiled, starting with Niagara Falls. Well, the countdown's on to the 2026 FIFA World Cup, literally.
Really? There's a clock?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see.
Beautiful.
There is a clock. A countdown clock was unveiled on Table Rock in Niagara Falls today. It stands about 2 meters tall. 3 meters tall, featuring a maple leaf mosaic. A separate clock will be installed in Nathan Phillips Square tomorrow. And Mayor Olivia Chow spoke about the cost of hosting the World Cup on News Talk 1010 this morning. She says the city should have had funding commitments from the province and federal government before they made a bid to host some of the games.
We went ahead and signed the bid without the financial commitment from the feds and the province, but that's past. What we are doing going forward is drumming up and looking at legacy, that if we could train more soccer coaches, referees, get more young people out in the field playing soccer.
And Ontario Sports Minister Neil Lumsden was at today's event. He was asked about Mayor Chow saying that the city needs more money from the province to host the World Cup. She claims that Vancouver's getting a bigger investment from BC than Toronto's getting from Ontario.
We'll go back to the original conversations and meetings, and the number was always $97 million. And as being a host, we would assume that when they go ahead and plan for this, the $97 million, which was fine and continued to be fine for the longest time, the story is changing a little bit now. So again, we're going to work with Toronto and find out how best that $97 million can be spent to have a phenomenal World Cup.
And meanwhile, Canada emerged victorious at the inaugural Canadian Shield tournament, despite losing to African champion Ivory Coast 5-4 in a penalty shootout after a scoreless draw in regulation time. The Canadian men finished with 4 points, 1 ahead of New Zealand and Ukraine, and 2 ahead of Ivory Coast.
Well, we had a chance to speak to Vice Captain of Team Canada, Stephen Eustachio, about the excitement building for the World Cup. He says that the team's relying on fan support.
We need all the fans to be cheering for us. We're going to play against top teams in the world, so they have their strength, and obviously we're still not on that level where we can compete with all of them. But at the same time, if we have the fans with us, if the stadium is full, if the stadium is full of red and white, I think we have a good possibility to make it through the group stage at least. We're going to be pot 1, which is very important, and we're just trying to make everybody tune in, because at the end of the day, without their help, we're not going to accomplish nothing.
They definitely have my support. You're like American. Will you support Canada just a little bit?
Oh, man. I can't believe you're putting me on the spot.
I'm just asking.
Of course.
Okay, good.
Of course.
Okay, good. Because America does not look good right now in soccer right now. Okay, well,
man.
Canada heads the CONCACAF Gold Cup next, opening against Honduras on June 17th in Vancouver. I'll cheer a little bit for America, just a bit.
All right, the Blue Jays were looking for the sweep this afternoon when they took on the St. Louis Cardinals.
Like Altuve, maybe.
Oh, this one is drilled. Ernie Clement hits it out.
You heard Dan the Man. Ernie Clement hit Toronto's only home run in the game to extend their lead over St. Louis. They held on to win 5-2 to sweep the series. Toronto has won 12 of the last 13 games and currently are first in the American League wildcard spot. Toronto now go to Philadelphia to kick off a 3-game series against the Phillies.
It's 5:59, 28 degrees. This is Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Thanks for watching. CTV News at 6 is next. Live shot of rush hour.